Hey guys, and welcome to another recent viewing video. And today I finally got to sit down and watch the new Luc Besson movie called Lucy, starring Scarlett Johansson and Morgan Freeman. And in fact, I literally just got done watching it a couple minutes ago, and I liked it. But if it sounds like maybe I have some slight resignation when I say that, you would be correct. I guess I was hoping that it would just blow me away, and instead it was just really, really good. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and jump into a couple of the negatives that I had before I even really talk much about the movie itself. Well, maybe it would make sense to just kind of set it up a little bit. Okay, Scarlett Johansson plays this girl named Lucy, who is in, I believe it's South Korea. That's what I would imagine it to be. Seoul or something like that. Not a whole lot of setup as to why she was there, going to school or something like that. And the movie starts with her basically talking to this dude out in front of a building, and he's asking her to take this case, this metal briefcase thing that's got quite clearly a handcuff stuck to it. Take it in and drop it off at the desk, or have them give it to a gentleman, and do this for me because I've been in here a couple of times recently and I get paid to do this and I don't know what's inside it, yada yada yada. Eventually he just slaps the cuff right onto her, so she's forced to go in and do it. And of course, shit goes wrong. He gets shot, she gets taken up to this guy and all of his thugs, and is forced to open up the case. And inside, it's not explosives, it's not guns, it's not poison gas or something crazy like that. It's 4 bags of this blue, I hesitate to call it powder. It looked like something more like Pop Rocks or something like that. It didn't look like the kind of stuff you would sniff, but I don't do drugs, I don't use drugs, I don't witness any of that kind of stuff. So it was just like, whatever. Anyway, it turns out to be this drug. I don't know if it's based on some sort of actual chemical, CPH4 or CHP4 or something like that. At one point in the movie, a doctor says that a woman's body produces it at some point in a pregnancy in very small doses to help, I guess, kind of like kickstart growth and whatnot in a baby's body, in the fetus. But in such large doses, it should kill somebody. But in the case of Lucy, well, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. Lucy is knocked out, and they cut her stomach open, and they put a bag of that stuff into her. They put the other 3 bags into the bodies of 3 other people, and they send them out to go to their respective countries or whatever, or their countries, and they arrive, and one is in Rome, one's in Berlin, one's in Paris, and presumably Lucy would have been sent to the U.S. or maybe somewhere in Europe, because at one point the guy said this is going to be all the rage in Europe. I don't know. This kind of harkens back to my major complaint for the movie, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So anyway, then she wakes up and she's in some prison cell with a bunch of thugs, and it looks like she's still in Korea or somewhere and not necessarily sent out yet. I don't know if it was a staging area for them before they sent them out, or if someone else got to her, they sent her there because they weren't going to send her home. I don't know. I was confused there. And she doesn't like being touched and pawed at by these guys, and one of them goes off and punches her, kicks her in the stomach a couple times. This causes the bag to burst in her intestines, and a major amount of this blue powdery stuff gets absorbed into her system. And instead of killing her, it sort of enhances her. For a moment there, it really felt like some sort of an X-Men mutant origin story. You see this shimmer of light in her eyes. You see her, she actually starts she's screaming and she's twitching, and she rolls up onto a wall and then onto the ceiling, pulls herself down by this chain, and she's flailing all over the place. And it felt like, for a moment, Luc Besson was trying to audition for a Marvel Universe movie or something. And when they come back to her, all of a sudden she's up with a start and moves very deliberately, gets up, chair, sits down. Guy walks in a few seconds later. And the action of the movie basically gets started from there. She makes her way out, and her brain capacity starts to expand. Now, this is something I definitely wanted to make sure I mentioned in this movie. Or in this video about this movie. There was a lot of, not necessarily controversy, but like a lot of critics and whatnot bashing on Luc Besson and the whole premise of this movie, with this whole apparently mythological conception that scientists have, or maybe not scientists, but us laymen, normal human beings have, that we've been told for all these years, that we only use about 10% of our actual brain capacity as human beings. And around the time the movie came out, stories were popping up. That's myth. That's not true. We use our full capacities, or the majority of it, a lot more than the 10%. So all the speculation of what could happen if we ever had the full capacity is just a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, it's a movie. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't know anything about that until this movie came out and all that shit started to come out, from critics and whatnot. I had absolutely no idea that wasn't truthful. I'd heard that all my life as well. So it's something that most people think is true. And while it's great to have a movie like this and the sun is just going crazy out there right now. While it's great to have a movie like this to kind of bring it forth so people have discussion and people get enlightened to this thing, I'm glad to now know that that's not true. But it doesn't lessen the idea or the story of this movie in any way, in my opinion. It's perfectly fine to go into it thinking that. That was, like I said, the whole premise of the movie. So, people, come on. Why not enlighten people without having to knock the director or the movie itself? And it just got on my nerves. Now, man, I've got a movie boner for Luc Besson. I love pretty much every movie of his that I've seen. I'm going to look on his filmography, but I could say a few right off the bat. Leon, The Professional, one of my favorite movies of all time. Fifth Element, great movie. Campy as hell, cheesy as hell, great movie. Unleashed with Jet Li, great film. Let's see some of the other ones here. The Messenger, The Story of Joan of Arc, another Mila Jovovich movie that he did that I really enjoyed. I'm looking at the ones that I know. The Transporter. Of course, now, I should be looking more at movies that he directed. Screenwriter, that's great. Producer, that's great. But I really appreciate more, and mostly, the ones that he directed. Leon was one, The Professional, The Fifth Element, The Messenger. Then he directed Angel A. That's one I have not seen, but I want to see it. One I was going to mention earlier, The Transporter. Well, he was a screenwriter and a producer, but he didn't direct it. But I love Jason Statham, and the Transporter movies that I've seen were pretty good. Arthur and the Invisibles I have not watched. That was a animated movie. Unleashed, unfortunately, was just a screenwriter and producer one, so that does affect my feelings of it just slightly as far as in his favor. Just, I still like that movie a whole lot. It was really, really good. He did an Arthur sequel. Here's a movie I don't recognize. He did an Arthur 3. He did The Lady. I don't recognize that one. I'm going to look at it real quick. Okay, I remember that movie, but I did not see it. It had Michelle Yeoh in it. He did The Family. I haven't seen that one. That one just didn't really... That was more like a mafia movie, and it's not really my thing. He was a part of... Yeah, he was a screenwriter and producer for all three of the Taken movies with Liam Neeson, so that's pretty cool. What is this? A new Transporter movie. Transporter Legacy, but it doesn't have Statham, and he's just producer on it. No, anyway. So I actually, personally, I feel a little bit better that a lot of the movies that I really love that he was involved with were ones that he actually did direct, especially The Professional, The Messenger, Fifth Element. Oh, love those. Lucy. Like I said, I love Lucy. That's a TV show. So, let me cover a couple more of the things from Lucy that I enjoyed. The action stuff was great. They were in such small doses at times, but they were good. This is where I struggle with these, because I'm not some sort of ideologist, and I'm not a critic, and I can't dissect stuff the way that I would like to, and then convey it the way I would want. But I know there was ideologies going on there. They were talking about certain things about life and all this and that, and showed a lot of stuff that I understand what they were going for. But it seemed like everything that they did was so condensed and marginalized. The action could have been more. They could have done more with some of the stuff. But when they did do it, when it was hitting on all cylinders, yeah, it was great. But maybe that's where I could get into my couple mini little complaints, especially the main one. The length of the movie in general was 90 minutes, an hour and a half. Ugh. Most people, and I think I've addressed this before, most people think, man, when movies start to get to be 2.5, going on 3 hours, that's way too long, man. I got too much shit to do in my life to be sitting here for 2 to 3 hours watching a movie or longer. Me, if a movie is good, I want it to go as long as possible. And if a movie seems to have some potential, which this one did, it should have been longer. 2.5 hours max would have done the movie, in my opinion, so much more justice. In movies like Leon the Professional, that movie introduces you to Leon, Jean Reno's character, to Matilda, Natalie Portman's character, and I was going to look this up before I even did this, and I forgot. So bear with me for a minute. Gary Oldman's character in this movie, Norman Stansfield, yeah. You really got to get to know everybody in the movie pretty well over the course of the film. This movie was 110 minutes, so it was almost 2 hours long. And to be honest with you, when I think back to it, I feel like it was probably a longer movie, but this says 110 minutes. But you got to know all those characters so very well in just what I thought was a perfect manner of doing it. In Fifth Element, you got to know Bruce Willis's character, Mila Jovovich's character, Chris Tucker's character. I mean, like everybody that you got to know, I felt like I really got to know who they were, and I cared about them, or I hated them, I disliked them, whatever the case was. All those movies did it great. In this movie, it was just like, bam, here you go. Here she is. She's thrust into this. Now she's got these abilities. Here's Morgan Freeman's character. It was just like everybody was thrust on you so quickly. You barely had enough time to really absorb what was going on or get to know anybody. I liked her character. I liked Scarlett Johansson's character of Lucy a lot, but I really didn't feel like we got to know her in it. And then all of a sudden, she gets to learn all these things that were beyond her. And I don't know. When I knew she was going to slip away and become something different, ascend or whatever was going to happen, or die completely, as it seemed like it was hinting at earlier in the film, I was like, I didn't really get to know her well enough. If for any reason I love Lucy, it's just because I love Scarlett Johansson so much. And so I was just reaching out for her, but I wanted to know who this Lucy was. Why was she there? Why was she partying with this guy the night before, or a few days before all this happened? Why was she in Korea? And all the characters that were... Morgan Freeman is great, but once again, he's a name and a voice that everybody knows. So you can't help but kind of latch on to him. But what was he really doing? What were his scientific aspirations? And how was the introduction to Lucy and what happened with her going to help him down the road and humanity down the road? And there was like a French detective or whatever who seemed to become a major character in the movie barely even spoke. And you just didn't really get to know anybody in the movie enough. I would have just loved to have seen the movie had another half hour, 45 minutes, or even an hour to develop some of the characters better. And and like I said, this was something I probably would have rather talked about at another time in other movies, but I'll condense it down a little bit so I can elaborate later. But several years ago, within the last decade or so, I got into a lot of Jackie Chan movies, Jet Li movies, Donnie Yen. I've mentioned these guys before. I got into a lot of their movies that they did, in China, and then saw what a lot of their movies in Hollywood were like. And my best example for it is one of my favorite, martial arts movie of all time, which is Jackie Chan's Who Am I? And when those guys who are known for all that kind of stuff, they're known for their physical prowess and their fight style and choreography and action and all that kind of stuff, when they were doing movies in Hong Kong or wherever they were filming at in China, they were allowed a certain kind of, freedom or whatever, because that's what the audiences over there expected. Fight scenes would go 10 or 20 minutes long. 10 or 20 minutes just of one fight scene. A guy and another guy, or a guy and a whole slew of people, or a bunch of people against a bunch of people, whatever the case may be. Those would go for like the length of a TV show. Just a fight scene. And still tell their story, introduce you to the characters, and bring you in. And then when guys like Jackie Chan and Jet Li came over to Hollywood and started doing movies over here, those fight scenes would be 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes less. And it was like not they as in, Jackie Chan or Jet Li or anybody, but it was like American-minded producers and directors think that American audiences have no attention span whatsoever, and they're not going to want to just see a couple of guys fighting like that. Even in something like The Matrix, the fight scenes don't always necessarily last for that long. They're amazing in a movie like The Matrix, and they were amazing in these movies like Who Am I and a bunch of these other movies. Like I got a bunch of movies on my DVD shelf, the Dragon Dynasty series, and just some old Jet Li and Jackie Chan movies in general that are so amazing because of those fight scenes. I can't believe that they come up with such amazing things to do in those movies. So anyway, maybe that wasn't as condensed as I wanted it to be, but it applies, in my opinion, here to Lucy, in that some of the stuff in Lucy was just so condensed because I guess they just figure that the audience that's going to watch that movie is not going to sit there and watch that much action all at once. Divvy it out or something like that. And that's just a complaint for me. Give us more. Give us more movies so we get to know who the people are a little bit more and care about them more. Give us some more of the action. Give us some more of the fun stuff. A movie like this, Luc Besson, I read some of the reviews through Vudu, because Vudu has an option where you can see a bunch of reviews, positive and negative, and ratings via Rotten Tomatoes and the Vudu community. And I allowed myself to read some of the reviews for Lucy before I started it up, and it just kind of pissed me off a little bit. I felt like Luc Besson was held to a little bit of a higher amount of respect in Hollywood than what a lot of the reviews were. Or they're like, we know Luc Besson is known for all this schmaltzy blah, blah 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 blah, and it was just it bothered me a little bit because to me his name means quality entertainment. And that's all that matters to me. And whether that's a movie like Boyhood, I know that's not a Luc Besson movie, but I'm just throwing it out there. A movie like Boyhood that had no action really whatsoever, no real climax or anything like that, just a movie watching some kid grow up, to a movie like, Lucy or any of Luc Besson's other movies like Fifth Element and The Professional, Joan of Arc, and then even to movies like from someone like Michael Bay, where it's nothing but explosions and aliens and all that kind of stuff. As long as it keeps my attention and entertains me, it doesn't matter if it's the worst movie in the world. I mean, there are bad movies out there that I think would entertain me. I still want to watch The Room by Tommy Wiseau, and I know that it's going to suck, but I think it's going to entertain me because of the quality of the suck. So anyway, that's really about all that I wanted to say about it. I did find it interesting. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this once again. Looking at the cast now of this is interesting on Wikipedia. Choi Min-sik as Mr. Jang. Besson said that Mr. Jang is the best villain he's scripted since Gary Oldman's character Norman Stansfield. Adding that whereas Lucy is the ultimate intelligence, Mr. Jang is the ultimate devil, Besson and his film team had to go and meet Choi in Korea, talk with him and discuss the story. And it was only at the very end that he said, okay, I'm interested, I want to be in. I liked his character. He speaks in Korean. I can't understand what he's saying. It was kind of a bummer to not be able to hear those words in a way that I could understand it and I could absorb it. But it's funny that Besson said something about how he, kind of likens him as one of his best villains since Gary Oldman's Norman Stansfield in Leon the Professional, because I thought Mr. Jang looked like Norman Stansfield if he was a Korean gentleman. He kind of had some similar facial hair, and the hair on his head, his hairdo was similar, and even when he kind of first pops up, he had some mannerisms to him that I want to believe that Luc Besson wanted it that way, or maybe that Choi Min-sik had, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but maybe he even looked at that movie and looked at the way Gary Oldman acted, and maybe he decided to put some of that into his performance. I don't know, may never know. Whenever I'm able to pick up the Blu-ray for Lucy, maybe there'll be some behind-the-scenes stuff that'll clear that up a little bit. But anyway, that's about all I wanted to say. I can't really think of anything else about this movie. I did enjoy it. I wish it would have been longer. I think it would have made the movie that much better to just flesh a lot of the stuff out in it. But in the end, I was really pleased with it. It just could have been so much more. So anyway, that's that. That was Lucy. Thanks for watching. See you next time.